Week 2 of college football was full of upsets and full of surprises, and that kind of led to a tough week with our best bets. And we'll dive right into it here. A 5-7 week overall, not awful, but not great either. We'll look at the losses first. Duke plus 3.5. Illinois took advantage of some major turnovers. Blue Devils did not look good at times, and that kind of cost them. UConn and Syracuse over 15.5. Looking back on it, probably not the smartest decision. I did like how the offenses looked, but it was just a slow game. Texas State UTSA under 66.5. It kind of started out a little bit slower, but neither of those defenses wanted anything to do with stops, so that was not a great decision. Florida minus 17.5 was the biggest surprise. I did not expect the Gators to struggle as much as they did, let alone lose to South Florida at home. Western Kentucky got absolutely dominated by Toledo. Plus 7 was not a good decision. Penn State minus 41.5 honestly got close at the end, but it appears that Penn State is just trying to keep things vanilla for the most part until they get to that Oregon game. Ole Miss minus 10, a slow start for Austin Simmons once again, really cost us there. So that was overall not a great choice. The wins, though, were pretty good. Baylor made a second half comeback to win 48-45 in overtime against SMU, and that was a really exciting game to watch. The Mustangs looked really good in the first half, and Sawyer Robertson and the Bears looked even better in the second half, made a late comeback and found a way to win. Plus 3 was a really stressful bet, but it was still really fun to watch. Oklahoma minus 4.5. That one was never really in doubt. It looked like this defense is locked in. They made Bryce Underwood really uncomfortable for the most part. Arizona State, Mississippi State under 59. This one was fairly easy. I didn't think that either offense was going to be overly explosive, and that certainly was the case. Arizona State gets upset by Mississippi State. Texas Tech minus 47.5. Now, the Red Raiders nearly blew it there, and Kent State scored 2 late touchdowns against the backups, and Texas Tech responded with a touchdown to win by 48. I really still like that one. I thought that one was a good one. It's just that the backups made things a little bit more interesting. And then North Carolina bounces back with a solid win over Charlotte. The minus 13 there was good there as well. For money lines, San Diego State, Virginia, and UConn all lose. San Diego State, honestly, it was not looking good. Even until Washington State pulled away, it just wasn't looking great. Virginia absolutely chokes in the last second, throws a pick late. That one was nearly going to be good. UConn also choked. So we had 2 games that could have been really good for the bets here, for money line sprinkles here, and it just honestly did not work out. Ohio, though, comes in for us here, plus 130. They beat West Virginia at home. That was a fun game to watch, even though it was pretty sloppy overall, but still fun to see a MAC team take down a team from the Big 12. So again, 5-7 overall, down 2.49 units. Overall, though, we're plus 0.91 and 14-11 for bets on the year. For straight up picks, 7-5 puts the record at 16-10. The channel 8-4, good week for the channel, put at 16-10 as well. We'll dive into week 3. Week 3 has a lot of opportunities for potential bets, and there are a lot of games that I am watching. Now, after a tougher week, I think a lot of times we tend to be a little bit shy on our decisions, but I think that this is still a fun week with a lot of potential. Some of these numbers will have changed since we recorded the previews. So we'll start with Houston and Colorado on Friday night, as well as Kansas State, Arizona. Those are some interesting games to watch. They are going to be fun Big 12 matchups. And in terms of bets, I'm going to keep an eye on the Houston-Colorado line. I think that the Colorado quarterback situation could be something to pay attention to. I like Houston. And also with Kansas State, Arizona being a 1.5 point favorite is something to keep an eye on. If you truly think they're better, by all means, go for it. But I think Kansas State will find a way to bounce back. I trust that Chris Kleiman will have it figured out. If they do not, it's going to be a disastrous season for this team, and they're kind of on that path right now. The one game that I want to discuss a little bit longer, though, is Vanderbilt, South Carolina. Vanderbilt is a 5.5 point underdog, and right now with how South Carolina is playing, I don't think that Lenora Sellers looks very comfortable. They've needed punt return touchdowns to kind of open up the scoring for them. And I think that Vanderbilt is a tough team. And if you're looking at a game for maybe a doubling up on a bet, you could go with the 5.5 points for Vanderbilt. You could also go with the under and what that is at the time that you can get it. But I like Vanderbilt plus 5.5 in that one. I think that the Commodores are going to keep things interesting. Sticking in the SEC, at the time of recording, Ole Miss was a 9.5 point favorite, and right now I believe it's down to 8.5. You can probably get a 9. You'll have a couple options for what you want there. I think that Ole Miss has struggled early on, and that leaves them vulnerable to a game like this. And to see Arkansas playing the way that they are, they definitely have a lot to prove, but this is a team that I think can definitely surprise us. And it started out at 12.5. And if you were able to get that, you probably felt really good about that. I really like Arkansas at plus 8.5. We'll see if it's moved by the time that this gets posted, but that is another one that I do like. I think that Arkansas can keep things interesting. I think that one could also be a shootout. Pay attention to the over under, whatever that number might be. Get the over on that depending on how high it's risen or not. That is one I do really like as well. Oregon and Northwestern, I could see Oregon covering the 27.5 point spread, but I'm going to go with the first half. I think Oregon gets off to a fast start so far against both Montana State and Oklahoma State. They have done that. So I like Oregon minus 14.5 in the first half against this Northwestern team. For Clemson and Georgia Tech, I don't necessarily know if I'm going to touch that one. That one feels like two teams that are in very different places. We'll see. Right now, Haynes King's status is really going to be a question. If he's good to go, maybe I lean towards Georgia Tech. If he's not, though, that could be a big question mark. Central Michigan, I expect Michigan to bounce back, but I don't really like that line. Oklahoma's probably going to beat Temple, but Temple is kind of an unknown. They've started out really fast, and they have a 2-0 record right now. They're not going to be able to hang with Oklahoma, in my opinion, but that's one that maybe, depending on how fast they start and what the line is, could look at that as a potential live bet. Alabama, Wisconsin, I think Alabama is going to run away with that one, but 20.5 for that team, especially after what we saw against Florida State. I don't necessarily know if I feel comfortable enough with that. And then Auburn and South Alabama, I'm not really going to touch that one. That one is one that I'll kind of just pay attention to and maybe see how things start once again, but I don't really know if I want to go with that one yet. Then we go to the afternoon slate. Georgia and Tennessee is the headliner, and that's a big one. Tennessee is playing with a lot of confidence, and this is a big opportunity for them to show that they can pull off an upset. And the Georgia Bulldogs are looking to make a statement as well. So far, they've kind of gotten off to a little bit of a slow start. Last week against Austin Peay wasn't great. There are some questions about Gunnar Stockton, some questions about Mike Bobo, but I do think that Georgia is going to get the job done. I do like them at minus 3.5. This one is one where I'm going with it. I'm sticking with my gut of what I see from Georgia and what I see from Tennessee. I think when you look at Syracuse and Tennessee's win over Syracuse, that was impressive, but then you look at what happened with Syracuse and UConn, not necessarily as impressive of a team. Maybe that says something about Tennessee as well. So I'm going to lean with Georgia here at 3.5. I'm going to lock that up. I do think that they get the job done. They cover the points there. Even though it's on the road, it's going to be tough, but I think that Georgia wakes up a little bit and figures things out. Two games not really touching: SMU and Missouri State, and then Oregon State and Texas Tech. I do think that Texas Tech could win by more than 23.5. So that would be one I'd lean towards the over there, but I think that that's one I'll pay attention to, maybe go with live. Pitt, West Virginia, I don't necessarily know what I think is going to happen. West Virginia is coming off that loss against Ohio. Pitt looks really strong so far, but it's the backyard brawl. You just never know what's going to happen. Iowa State being 21-point favorites on the road against Arkansas State. I don't necessarily trust Iowa State to just be this offensive juggernaut, given that we haven't really seen that except for against South Dakota. So I don't really like that one. Missouri could easily win by 28 or more against Louisiana. The Raging Cajuns are not looking good for so far. I don't know if Walker Howard is good to go. That is one I definitely keep on my watch list here. I think that Missouri, after what we saw last week, put up a ton of points in that one. South Florida and Miami. Miami is a 16.5 point favorite. If you really like the Bulls and think they can pull off a stunner again, then this one should be really easy. I don't necessarily like it. I also don't like going with Miami at plus 16.5, or if it's going to be higher by the time this gets out. So I'm staying away from that one as well. Liberty and Bowling Green. Liberty's coming off that tough loss to Jacksonville State. Bowling Green lost by 14 to Cincinnati. That one could be a very interesting matchup. Ohio's going to get killed by Ohio State. That one's not going to be particularly close. Another one that I'm keeping an eye on that I potentially like, Old Dominion at Virginia Tech. The Monarchs have definitely beaten Virginia Tech in the past, and at 7.5, with how much this Virginia Tech team is struggling, that could be a really intriguing line. I might actually add that one as the game gets closer. It started out a little bit closer than that. It's kind of went in the direction of Virginia Tech. So we'll see if that one goes more in favor of Old Dominion, and you could snatch that up, keep that one close. They're also playing for Jason Henderson, who retired because of his health, and that could be another factor that plays into this game, gets Old Dominion a little bit more focused. It is at 8.5 or 7.5. There are some 7, 6.5, so that's a really good line, I think, if you're really high on Old Dominion and really low on Virginia Tech. Then we go to the night slate. Florida and LSU. LSU is currently favored by 9.5, and this is a team that it's actually dropped down to 7.5 now. Florida is coming off of that tough loss to South Florida. LSU has started a little bit slow. They got the big win over Clemson, and then they struggled to put away Louisiana Tech. So that's one that could be closer. I don't know if I trust the Gators, though, to move the ball against that LSU defense. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. I just don't like that one right now. Texas A&M and Notre Dame. I think these are two offenses that might struggle against some good defenses. Notre Dame put up 24 points against Miami's defense, but they also struggled mightily at times. And if they continue not giving Jeremiah Love the ball, then that could be a struggle as well. We're not really sure what Marcel Reed's status is yet for Texas A&M, but that's an offense that has put up some points against inferior competition against UTSA and Utah State. I think that both teams are going to have a tough time moving the ball against these defenses. Right now, I'm going to go with the under 50.5 for the total for this game. ECU and Coastal Carolina. I think ECU could put up a lot of points. Coastal Carolina is struggling. MJ Morris hasn't thrown a touchdown. Another one I'm keeping an eye on, Utah minus 23.5 at Wyoming. Wyoming is better, but Utah is an absolute wagon right now. And then the one I really do like, Duke and Tulane. It started out as -3. It's now at 1.5 in favor of Tulane for the most part. This is one that is all over the place. There are some lines that have Duke favored by 1.5. There are a lot that have Tulane at 1.5. Right now, I'm going to go with Duke plus 1.5, and Darian Mensah's return to Tulane. I think that last week was a struggle for this team. They're going to clean up some of those mistakes. They're going to be motivated. And Tulane's playing two quarterbacks. And I think that they have not faced a defense like Duke's. And they have not faced a defensive line, a front six, front seven, like the Duke Blue Devils. Even though this one's on the road, the emotions are going to be high. The environment's going to be crazy in favor of Tulane. I think Duke gets the job done. I'm going with the Blue Devils plus 1.5. Navy and Tulsa. Navy should take care of business, but Tulsa is a difficult team to judge right now. Air Force is -4 in Utah State. That is one that is hard to judge because Air Force has only played one game. Utah State is better, but they have a win over UTEP, and then they just lost by 22 to Texas A&M. Texas State against Arizona State. If Arizona State beat Mississippi State last week, I'd feel very confident taking the Sun Devils at -14.5. I think it's dropped a little bit, -13.5, but I don't feel confident that the Sun Devils are going to be able to cover that. I also don't trust that Texas State can get stopped. So for now, I'm going to leave that one alone, but I will pay attention to that one there. Minnesota and Cal. I'm going to be biased towards the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I think that they'll get the job done on the road, but they have a tough task ahead of them. And I think that's going to be it's going to be a game featuring two young quarterbacks, and that'll be one that's really fun to watch and one that's definitely worth paying attention to. Boston College and Stanford. Boston College was a 10.5-point favorite at the time as I recorded for the preview. It is all the way up to 13.5 for some, 14 for others. that is one I think Boston College could put up a ton of points against that Stanford team. And honestly, that one might be intriguing. If you're able to get it at 10.5, that would have been nice. But that is one I think that this is a Boston College offense that's putting up a ton of points. It is tough to go cross country and play at a really late time. That is something that I don't love, and probably a reason why I'm staying kind of away from that in general. There are a few others that we'll add here. We'll go over the ones that we've talked about so far. Oregon first half minus 14.5, Georgia minus 3.5 against Tennessee, the Texas A&M-Notre Dame under 50.5 for the game, Arkansas plus 8.5 against Ole Miss, Vanderbilt plus 5.5 against South Carolina, and Duke plus 1.5 against Tulane. The other ones that I'm going to add here, I didn't mention this before, Clemson, Georgia Tech, first half under 26.5. I think right now both offenses have struggled and early in games, and I think that's going to be the case in this one. We'll see what that turns out to be, but I think they're going to be under that for sure. The other one I want to talk about, or the two other ones, Memphis minus 3.5 against Troy. I think that even though Troy kept things close against Clemson, I think Memphis is going to take care of business. Even though Memphis has some things to sort out on both sides of the ball, they appear to be a little bit more steady right now. And Troy, I still just don't really trust. I think that was kind of a blip and just a game where they were able to kind of surprise people. And I think Memphis is going to take care of business. Jacksonville State plays Georgia Southern. And Georgia Southern has struggled stopping the run. You look at last week against USC, Waymon Jordan ran all over them. You look at the week before, Fresno State had no problem. Rayshawn Luke was running all over this defense as well. Jacksonville State just beat Liberty thanks to Gavin Wimsatt and Cam Cook. They ran all over the Flames, and that is a group that is very good at running the football right now. I think they're facing a Georgia Southern defense that has struggled to defend the run. That feels like a win-win for me there. So I think we're going to go with Jacksonville State plus 3.5 in that one. That one feels like Jacksonville State has some momentum on their side. They're going to build upon that. The only money line that I have right now is Southern Miss plus 1.5 against App State. There are a few others that I'm going to keep an eye on, but for the most part, there weren't a ton that I liked this week. There are some to keep an eye on. Like I said, we talked about Old Dominion. That is one that maybe a money line is a little bit better play if you really like the Monarchs there, but not many that I want to play here. As always, comment below which ones you like, which ones you don't. And as always, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.